Everyone, we'll get started in just a moment.
All right, plug us in, you're on. And where's your?
Here, can you put this here so I can look at it?
Hi, Congresswoman, how are you?
Good, how are you this morning?
Good,
Just
good.
organized here. How you doing?
Doing very good. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good. Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
We're going to give everyone just another moment to log on,
Sure.
and then we'll get started.
All right, sounds good to me. You guys being safe?
We're
You're
trying.
okay?
We're trying
Okay.
hard. We're trying hard. I
Good.
think so.
Good.
And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. We're joined by Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. We'll get started in just a moment. I want to thank all of our streaming partners, the Madison Chamber of Commerce, Bridgeport Regional Business Council, Milford Chamber of Commerce, Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce, and Central Connecticut Chambers of Commerce. We have a sponsor today. We're sponsored by Fresh Concepts, powered by Halo, branded solution experts in promotional products and branded merchandise, including all of your PPE needs. As we begin the planning process of returning to work, you can visit their website to check in on the different PPE products that they have for when we're ready to get back to work. Also, as I scroll through the screen, just want to thank all of our investors in the chamber who help support us and have allowed us to continue to operate in this environment that we're all in now. We're going to take your questions today, but I'm going to let Congresswoman DeLauro start off and tell us a little bit about what she's seeing and what's going on with Congress. And then if you want to put your questions into the chat box or into the Q&A, we'll get through as many of those as we can.
Okay.
So Congresswoman, with that, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you being here. I know you've been very busy back and forth to Washington with so much going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Garrett, and a pleasure to be with all of you. I wish our circumstances were different, but my hope is that everyone who is on, that you and your families are safe and taking the precautions necessary to be safe. So I want to say thank you to you, Garrett. Let me say thank you for your leadership of the Greater New Haven Chamber and you know, your collection of experience with business, law, service to our country. So you are, we're in good hands with you, with the chamber. So, and I understand you guys have been doing this on a weekly basis, which is very, very good to really keep in touch with people. I think people at all levels, we need to be in touch. Let me just talk a little bit about what is going on in Washington, and particularly how this transfers to help in Connecticut, so that we can try to get workers and businesses to what I would call the dawn of a recovery. You know, it goes without saying about the economic value of small businesses, what you mean to the community. And I'm anxious to bring the full weight of the federal government at this time for all of you. A little bit of context, let me, if I can, is we did pass on last Thursday an interim package, centrally focused, a funding package that was essentially focused on the economic well-being of small businesses. Why did we move to an interim package? And I think everyone on the line understands this. The first package, which was substantial in $349 billion, and of that, I might add that Connecticut was Connecticut businesses. There were about 18,500 PPP loans. It amounted to something like $4.15 billion. But so many businesses, Connecticut businesses, faced unbelievable difficulty in accessing the program. PPP, as well as the emergency injury disaster loans. And while the Paycheck Protection Program was designed to help small businesses cover payroll during this immediate crisis, the first tranche of the funding was exhausted quickly. The difficulty in making application, some people applied on April 3rd, and then at the end of the process were told that they couldn't access any of the funds because the money had run out. But what we found, and that there were the difficulties and the flaws and the failures, I might add, underfunded according to need, larger businesses with more specialized policy and finance staff were better able to get the money. And quite frankly, the banks prioritized their preferred customers for reasons, and I'll be frank with all of you, including the ability to earn higher fees, much higher fees in doing this. And that's something, in my view, that ought to be looked at. So that the businesses and our businesses were left, with nowhere to go and in an untenable position. My office, by the way, has well over 50 inquiries. We are trying to work individually with people to see if they can, how we can help them to get the relief and the help that they need. So now that was what happened at the beginning of April. That failure and those flaws generated, and the need generated the need for a second tranche of funding. And that was this interim bill that we passed last week, so that we would then deal with another infusion of resources. And that was, sometimes people were asking, well, why did it take so long? Well, one of the things we wanted to try to ensure that we could in some way correct the difficulties that arose from the first pot of money, and focusing in on small businesses. So this is what's happened in this last package. It increased the emergency economic injury disaster, the EIDL grants, from 10 billion to 20 billion. It increased the Paycheck Protection Program from $349 billion to $659 billion, over $300 billion more. It also included set-asides to reach community businesses, $30 billion for banks and credit unions, community banks, credit unions, including minority depository institution, the MDIs, more than 10 billion in assets, but less than 50 billion in assets that are PPP lenders. $30 billion for banks and credit unions with less than $10 billion in assets, as well as all community development financial institutions, MDIs, certified development companies, and micro lenders that are PPP lenders, to try to address, again, the failure, the flaws of what didn't happen the first time around. Now, this is, I will say this at the outset, this may be as well an imperfect pot of money. We may, and I need to hear from all of you and gauge where we need to go next, because there will be a next package. It's hard to say, it's either CARES 2 or the fourth package that we put out. Whatever it is, there will be, and that is what we will be trying to work through over the next several weeks. Let me say several. Nothing happens in a week, unfortunately. So now, you also have seen, and which I just heard about on the news this morning, that the latest SBA rollout has been troubled as well, and that it appears that the system is overwhelmed. Step back for a second. I think so many of the systems that we thought were in place have crashed because of the overwhelming need. But that triggers in my mind the need to look at how we have strong and robust systems that are working. That includes the unemployment insurance system, that includes our public health infrastructure, et cetera. So, and so we will continue to pay attention to that. Now, I have heard from so many of you regarding the 501c6, okay? The designation for chambers of commerce that prevents you from receiving the funds through the PPP program. Along with about 60 of my colleagues, we have urged the speaker to ensure that the chambers could access these funds. Now, I've talked to the Small Business Committee, talked to the Speaker's office, and I mentioned the next package of trying to remedy this in the next package that we are looking at. I understand the hardship that the chambers are facing. You are critical in terms of your support of our small businesses and helping to fuel that economy for Main Street. So I will continue to make the case for including the chambers and associations. I mentioned
We appreciate that, Rosa. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I am committed to doing that. We've had several conversations with actually the person who does all the policy work, not only my colleague Nydia Velasquez, but the staff that is doing the policy work on this, you know, to reinforce what we need. I also just, and I won't go into great detail, I've heard that among the recipients, and I also spoke with the restaurant industry in our state, in our community. And restaurants only receive 9% of PPP loans.
Wow.
And I was able to, and I just want to get hold of it here for a second. I provided testimony to our small business committee on where I thought we ought to go next. And it may be that that's something I get to you, Garrett, for distribution. It was to the chair and the ranking member. You know, it's about the businesses. I focused a little bit on the restaurants because I heard so much from them about the nature of the business. But the point of my testimony was that the SBA needs to consider the unique business needs of different applicants.
Mhm.
It's not just cookie cutter.
Right.
And that may be difficult, but we've got to have a way to be able to address unique business needs. What I heard from the restaurants, that they said, this month's sales, pay, this is a quote, pay for last month's bill. And 4 in 10 restaurants are closed. You know, so if restaurants receive a PPP loan, they have to promptly bring back 75% of their staff. But the dining rooms remain closed.
Right.
That may not be optimal. Instead, staggering the staffing requirements until after the restaurant's more fully open to be able to consider. That's an option that we've asked them to consider. Have the flexibility to choose the loan period that best accommodates the full reopening of the restaurant to maximize the dollars where it needs. Now, and we're looking at the number of people that restaurants employ, and also their feeding capacity at a time when we are looking at people not having access to food. We are not in a situation today where, though the reports this morning are troubling on what's happening with the food supply, but we are a nation of abundance with regard to food. It's our distribution system that is lacking. And restaurants can play a role in the distribution of food. So in any case, I also, because I saw in a document that Bill Purcell put forward and I'll answer the questions if they come up, because I didn't know all the answers, but I asked my staff to look into this, how bankruptcies are being treated, what the employee retention credit is, the employee retention credit, I'm sorry, the coverage for pandemic risk insurance, which people have asked about. And again, the associations are lumped with the chambers in terms of, at the moment, not being eligible for the loans. I want to close with you. I just would say to you, I'm sure all of you want to see your businesses reopening. What the governor has said, he's put together an advisory team with co-chairs leading the effort, and he has laid out some of the criteria, which I think you're probably aware of: 14-day decline of cases and hospitalization, mass testing, contract tracing and self-isolation, protecting high-risk populations, adequate supply of PPE, continued physical distancing, and adequate healthcare capacity. So he's listening to the scientists, to the health professionals on trying to construct a careful plan of opening up. Look, my last comment, it's imperative. And this is not just words on a page, to be honest, or saying this to you. Our economy is in unspeakable condition at the moment. And providing relief to small businesses and to their employees is critical. The economic problems of small businesses, the economic problems of families today, these are, and overshadowing all of that is their health care. People talk about their health, and unless we do something about health and the testing, we are not going to be able to bring back a vibrant economy. So I want to work with you to help you to, as you struggle to pay the bills, and to assure you that that you receive the support that you need. So with that, let me just hush up, and I'm happy to try to take some questions. And I'll be honest with you, if I can't answer all of your questions, I will get the answer and get back to you through Garrett. Okay.
Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate it. You know, first question, and you touched on it. There's been so much panic with the Paycheck Protection Program, worry that, you know, all the money's going to be gone. We saw it go through once. A lot of analysis that there's probably so many loans backed up in the system right now that even this next tranche will go away. I did hear you say that Congress is going to meet again. So should businesses expect that there will be more funding if there is the need out there?
Yes, I'm going to say unequivocally yes. And in terms of the Congress, they're talking about going back into session on Monday the 4th. Now, we worked through the CARES 1 package, the second package, this interim package, all of this, while and then we've gone back for the particular votes with the Congress actually not in a formal session. So over the next, as I said, 3 weeks, I've got my list, you know, in front of me about where we want to go on the next piece. And so that's what we will be crafting. And so unequivocally, yes. And I would also say to you, because particularly I would be very, very active, all of you, on this 501c6 piece, which I know is of great concern, but also make your voices heard loud and clear. I'm hopeful that whatever the difficulties were with the system in opening this faucet, that the money is now going to get out to the smallest of enterprises, the minority enterprises, the women-owned businesses, that we then see some relief. But you're going to have to be letting me know and us know what remains here, what remains, so that we can generate the proper direction in the next effort.
Some questions about how municipalities, government entities, even government regulated utilities will be treated in the next package. And because obviously a lot of expenses are going out the door right now.
Yeah. Let me just mention, I'll speak on the state and local government. I think that will be a central focus of the next plan. We tried in this last one without success to get that in. Quite frankly, we opened the door. That $250 billion that was first thought about was again going to go via the same route with the big banks. We stopped that to reorganize it, and we also put in additional money for the hospitals. Quite frankly, our hospitals are bleeding. You know, we've got, I heard $6 million a month loss, you know, and furloughing workers in hospitals. So we managed to get that a piece in there, as well as a piece on testing, because if we cannot universally test, we can't gauge the continued extent of the problem so that it can be addressed. So the conversation, and the speaker has loud and clear, even in all of her public statements, talked about state and local government as being central to where we go in the next package. I don't know specifically, I'll be honest with you, Gary, about the regulation on the utilities, but I will check into that. I want to be clear about what I do know and what I don't know.
No, appreciate it. On the testing, what is your understanding? I mean, I think we've all seen, you know, you've solved one problem with it, but then all of a sudden there's another shortage of, you know, whether it's PPE or then all of a sudden the chemical reagent. So, you know, lots of supply chain issues along the line, and, you know, it's a huge undertaking. We understand.
I must say to you all that my biggest frustration has been with regard to a PPE and with the testing protocol. What I found out about PPE, I don't know, maybe it's just naive. And I will tell you, in the last CARES package, the first CARES package, under the committee that I have jurisdiction over, which is Labor, Education, and Health, we put in $16 billion for the Strategic National Stockpile. I'll be very honest with you. I have not been able to get an accounting of the use of that funds. What's been used, where it went, what's left, if anything. And so one of the things I desperately want to do with my committee is do an oversight hearing about where is it going. My frustration around PPE knows no dimensions, because it would seem to me that we have the Defense Production Act, which says if we do not have enough, that the federal government then becomes the prime contractor, and everything else is pushed aside, so that we have the capacity at the federal level. The president has the authority to say to our manufacturers, you manufacture this product, these products. And what I found out when I got on the phone with the director of FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I had on that call Congressman Courtney, staff from a couple of my colleagues in the House, Congressman Hines was on, Senator Blumenthal was on, and staff from the other offices. What I was told was, with regard to PPE, that we manufacture less than 10% of PPE in the United States, which in and of itself is a problem, thinking about our manufacturing base and what we could be doing. Secondly, that when they scour the world for the product, only 20% of it goes to FEMA. 80% goes into a commercial pipeline, which then pits localities against one another, states, cities, etc., of competing, etc. Why isn't, you all explain to me, you're business people. Why can't we say we are buying the product? This is where it needs to be, and that we are getting it out where it needs to be, rather than everybody out there for themselves. You know, you could go on a street corner and say, who can sell me, 5,000 masks? Who can sell me gloves? That's crazy. I don't believe we did this during the Second World War. The second piece of this is the testing. What is wrong with the ability of the United States to be able to test everyone? At first, it was only those who showed symptoms, or only those who were traveling back from China. Then it was anyone with symptoms. Then it was you could be asymptomatic. We provided in the CARES bill, in the first package that we did, the very first package, that those who were uninsured would be able to get tested free of charge. But we have been unable to succeed in either the testing or in PPE. I know it's a long answer, but for the life of me, I do not understand why the United States of America has been unable in these two areas, which is a logistics issue, more than anything else, been so unsuccessful at it. Sorry.
No, I understand. A lot of questions about SBA and getting the economic injury disaster loans out. We talked about paycheck protection. That's run more through the banks, but still obviously has a big SBA component. Are you seeing their capacity ramping up as we go through this? I know delays and non-responses is a lot of what I'm seeing on the questions we're getting from people.
Yeah, no, it's all about the delays, and it's all about that. Now, again, as I said with this package, which I said we increased the funding for the EIDL grants, but I don't know, from 10 to 20. I don't know if that is going to be enough, to be very honest with you. I don't know. I would love to hear from people about what's happening with people trying to access the market as of today, and what the delays are. And again, my office, let me give you the phone number. It's 203-562-3718. Please, I told you we have well over 50 calls. A lot of it was about the big banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, etc. But now we have tried to make the case for the community banks, etc. I need to know whether or not we are going to see continued delays, even given what we have now tried to do to try to correct that problem. My understanding is if you have applied, you do not have to reapply. That's my understanding of it. But people need to be in touch with their lender to find out where they are. And if you get the runaround, for what I want to hear about that right away. If you're starting to get the runaround again, let's hear about it now and scream from the rooftops.
I know a lot of our banks, and talking with them, they really started to get their routine down over the last week or so. It seemed like things were getting out to more and more businesses. But then yesterday, I heard the problems were, they just couldn't get through the portal, where the banks
Right.
couldn't reach into SBA to get that money through. So, continues to be something.
Think about the systems. Remember my point earlier on.
Yep.
We do not have an adequate system. Look, Connecticut, our UI system, overwhelmed with unemployment claims, crashed. It's not until the 30th of April our checks going to begin to go out.
Right.
People have been without money. Or maybe there was a group that went out, the middle of the month, but the rest are systems, which if we need to do an after the event action, we have got to look at our systems. Our laboratories, which is the guts of our public health infrastructure, have been unable because they have outdated equipment and they don't have adequate personnel that are trained to deal with the testing. The investment in our public health infrastructure, the investment in a UI system. I mean, these are critical issues. We have to deal short-term and long-term to build the architecture for these kinds of failures not happening again.
You asked about what businesses will need next. We've heard a lot of businesses say, okay, I know Paycheck Protection Program gets me to June. Future is so uncertain even into June, and after that, will there be something that will get me through the summer if we're still under, all the lockdowns that we are right now?
Yeah. Say that last part again. I didn't hear.
Just that there's so much uncertainty about what will even happen in the summer. Can you, if you're a restaurant, will you be able to reopen? And so questions about if there will be another program to deal with situations like that.
Look, I think as long as we are struggling economically, that you have officials that want to provide what's needed. We want to be able to provide the help that is needed, the resources, the money that is needed. That is an obligation. I view that, and don't misunderstand my terms. It's a covenant that you have in a contract with the federal government. And I know business says, stay away from me, federal government. I can do my business. I can get it done. We don't need you interfering. But when we have such a catastrophe as we are now undergoing, there is a very proper role for the federal government to be there, to be able to create the underpinning for the economy to succeed. There is no question about that. Anybody who thought you could do this by some alchemy doesn't know what they're talking about. So there, I would just say to you that you've got, yes, we'll be there to do it. Now, what we need to do, though, is see by way of how we correct. There were flaws in the first package. We've tried this. Let's just see what this does. Are there going to be continued flaws? Are there other pieces that need to be looked at that we can address? And I also want to say this to you. You may not know this. I'll be very quick. Because somebody asked me yesterday, well, what about where is the money coming from and all this, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what we got to do is let the money, we need to make sure that the resources are there. But I am also taking a look at something that occurred in the first package that was about, first it started out as $170 billion. It's now, they redone it, it's $135 billion, but $135 billion. I'll tell you precisely what this was. It was buried in the CARES Act, a provision that provided time $170 billion tax break for real estate investors and hedge fund managers. It applied not only to losses in 2020, but in 2018 and 2019. Tax break net operating losses confer 80% of its benefits to 43,000 taxpayers. Most Americans are getting that economic impact piece, $1,200. These individuals will gain an average break of $1.6 million. Wow. I don't care where you are on the spectrum of looking at tax, credits or breaks. I'm for them. This is obscene. This has nothing to do with the coronavirus. Could we take that money and use it for small businesses? You bet.
Yep.
These are the kinds of things, when I talk about oversight, this is what we have to be looking at so that we make sure that what we are appropriating is being used for the purpose that it has been laid out and can advantage your folks and others.
Rosa, I know one of the issues that's going to come up in the next bill, and we have heard businesses asking about this just because there's so much uncertainty. How do you think liability should proceed for, a business opens, they have their employees, an employee thinks they got sick because they went back into the work environment. This liability issue is something, it's just not clear where it's gonna fall down.
You know what, my dear, I don't know. That is, let's, try to put that in the hopper for questions. I don't know how that is going to be. Let me just ask a question here. Maybe people can respond to it. I read out what the governor has talked about reopening. What is the sense of this reopening effort in Connecticut amongst the business people? Where do your and your folks, what's their views?
I think it's across the board. I'm actually sitting on the business advisory committee for the governor's reopen. What we've seen in a lot of our surveys is that even not every, I think the governor's been very liberal in the businesses that he's allowed to be open. Now, obviously, a lot have been forced closed because of orders, but it's really the confidence that the consumer has. So we've had a lot of businesses that have closed their doors just because they have no customers. Right. They could be open, but there's no customers out there. So I think it's a mix of the governor easing some of the restrictions, and I know he said he wants to do that, but also getting more confidence in the consumer.
Listen, I'm on staff calls with kids all day long. It's great. Hi.
Okay.
Do you need anything from Costco?
No, good.
I love it. I love it. My grandson tried to feed me pizza the other night over the phone, by FaceTime.
But yeah, that's so that's what we're hearing. It is that, if you don't have the customers out there, you can be open, and so I think it's multi-layer. We have to get confidence.
Well, it's a good question for this advisory board that you're on as well. I think that business needs to think it through. I think we have to try to think it through. Look, this is such a process of unforeseen consequences here that, and I think about, how business is going to be opening. What is this, the social distancing? What does that mean in terms of how your business functions? We're trying to think about that. If the office is open, what's even the office configuration? Right. So with regard to staff, do we have, look, for me, I do office hours on Saturday mornings at a Stop and Shop or, so forth. But, how do you now proceed with these unforeseen consequences? And so it's almost, day by day. I don't know how best to, to describe it for people.
Yeah, the one thing I can add is just, and we've all seen this as you go out to stores, business people have adapted. They've, it's amazing walking into the grocery store, seeing, the plexiglass or different things. And so I think we can take a lot of lessons learned, and that's what we're trying to do from the businesses that have been open, because we've just seen them be innovative, adapt, different things that restaurants are doing to try to, and I know it's not meeting what they need for revenue right now, but you are seeing a lot of innovation out there among businesses, and we can take lessons from that.
Yeah, but it's important for me, and since you all are meeting on a weekly basis, that if you would please, let me know, and obviously we'll be trying to follow what's going on with this this interim package, but you'll be hearing from folks, and that kind of feedback is important for me to try to get back into the in our pipeline here, and to see where we go with the next effort and with the small business. And I'm sure you've talked to the SBA here with the folks here who are, I know I was on the phone with them, just last week and so forth. I'm doing a session this week with the small business women, with Fran Pastor.
Fran, great.
Yeah. So, to see what we have there and what's going on. So.
One question that's come up, and I think someone just put this in here, was, obviously so much devastation with the workforce. A lot of people have not gotten unemployment money yet, but when it does come, it seems like there will be some really good benefits for people who are at work. Not that you want to be out of work, but that,
yes,
the situation is taken care of. I've heard a lot of employers concerned about, well, my employees may be making more on unemployment with the federal plus up. Are they going to want to come back to work
Yeah.
especially if I get the Paycheck Protection Program, and I need to have the staffing to be able to qualify for the loan to convert to a grant.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think you said something there. People do want to work. They do. I'm sorry. I mean, it's, yeah, you know, look, hey, um, I think people are going crazy being at home. I think people are very concerned about what's going on with their economic situation. And yes, but you know, it may be that they may be getting a check, or they don't, and don't get health care. You know, there are all kinds of circumstances and situations. I guess I err on the side of knowing that your folks want to do the best that they need to do, and are not taking advantage of a program. I want to give that same kind of optimism to folks who, want to work. I know, look, I give you this, my stepson, he and his wife and my grandson are in Brooklyn, okay? He does a food for the a school system, was let go. Yes, but, and, was the unemployment was, he was able to take advantage of it, but he said, I want to go back to work, and so the company was going to trying for a loan, et cetera. And as soon as they could get a loan, they would, deal with their employees. I think, I think the employees will come back. I think we need to get them on their feet. We need to get businesses on their feet, and just get our economy back as soon as we can. It's not going to come back quickly to where it was, but to try to move it in a direction that's positive. So, and those benefits do not last forever.
I think that's a good point.
Forever. So it's,
yeah, it'd be difficult to, you may, for an individual situation, have it better with the benefits for the short term, but people are going to need jobs in the long term. Very difficult to turn down a job with so much uncertainty out there.
Exactly. They want, what do you want for your family?
Right.
You want, that sense of certainty that you're going to be able to provide, for your family. And you do that consistently, not 1 month, 6 months, 8 months, and then God knows what's going to happen. That kind of certainty makes for a more productive workforce.
Well, Rosa, I really appreciate your time. Any last words you want to leave us with today?
Only that, please understand that I'm available for, questions, comments, suggestions, complaints. That's, whatever. It's important for us to work together to be able to get us all moving again. So please be in touch on a regular basis, and happy to report in and get staff to report in on what we know, and give you the latest on what we know. But in the meantime, please, everyone, please stay as safe as you can. And if there is interest in the bankruptcy thing or the employee retention credit, we can get that information to you. By the way, on the pandemic risk insurance, which was asked about, I'm an original co-sponsor. My colleague, Carolyn Maloney from New York, is the sponsor. It's an important step against economic losses. So it's not there yet, but that's, obviously being considered, okay? But thank you all very, very much. And thank you for what you do and your concern about the future of our economy and our state. Thanks.
We appreciate it. And the big takeaway, and I think this is for all businesses, is that even if these funds run out on the Paycheck Protection Program, Congresswoman DeLauro and others are going to work to put more money in there. So, definitely act now. Don't slow down, but also don't panic yourself over it, because, we're hearing that you understand that need that's out there.
Okay. Thank you all. Take care.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank again our sponsor, Fresh Concepts, powered by Halo. Again, they have PPE that they are now offering for sale as you start to think about reopening your business. We have our morning mingle now, Councils in Conversation, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and then another webinar on workforce on Thursday morning. Congresswoman DeLauro, thanks again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rosa.
Thanks. Thank you.
It was
Gary.
great. Thank you very much.